And I'll tell you what, let me turn my amp on. Tell me if this is too loud. When I was born, my mother was on a drug called Twilight, and she doesn't remember anything for a week. She was on this real heavy drug called Twilight. So when I was born, I came into the world, I was premature. I came in like 38 days early or something like that. And so I came into the world, I was like completely whacked out of my mind, and they put me in this little incubator box. And there was this nun that took care of me and wouldn't let my mom see me at all. That's a pretty weird way to come into life if you think about it. It's like being an alien or something. So you can go anywhere on this thing. You can go up into infinity if you want to. Well, you know, we go to as many garage sales as we can go to, and we'll always ask the people, do you have any old records? And every once in a while, somebody will bring out a collection. And last week, I got a collection. A guy had like a big Peaches crate full of albums, probably 200 albums. And I go, well, what do you want for them? Because I looked through a few of them, and it was all the Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, and all the Doors, and all 70s stuff, really cool stuff. He goes, well, I need to get at least $10 for the whole collection. And they were all mint condition, no mildew or nothing. So every once in a while you get a big score like that. It's kind of a numbers game. If you go to 10 places like this, you don't find anything, it's the 11th place you go to that you find that special thing. See, now I'm not really seeing anything here. But you never know when something's gonna jump out at you. Look at this. Look at this. Look, this is pretty cool. Look at that. Space and Rocket Center, Huntsville, Alabama. I mean, that could be something real special. Don't you think you put that on eBay? When are you gonna find another one? Kind of looks like it fit my son. John, come here. Let's see. I don't know if I'm tall enough to reach that. Can you get that down? And I mean, you remember what Pete Townsend looked like when he was in the Who, and he was like wearing a jumpsuit like that?
I don't know if I can get it.
That's from NASA. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that could have been worn by an astronaut.
You need a Halloween costume?
Look at Space Shuttle.
Commander
It looks
wear.
like it would fit you perfect, John.
If you weren't with us today, John, it would be something we may go home with for you as a surprise. Classic. I think Halloween, you can carry your little bag of candy and put a bucket right in it and go around and say trick or treat and get your treats.
When my son John was born, I stopped playing music because I wanted to get away from the sex, drugs, and rock and roll and be a good father to him and stuff. Changed my whole life, really. I took a job with Rothman's Furniture as a decorator, but it was never really me. I've always been about music, and music has been my whole life. And just finally now, my son's 25 tomorrow. My daughter is 18 in a couple of weeks. I'm finally raised my kids, and they're both doing great. I'm really happy about that, but I want to get back to playing music again. And so that's what I've been working on, getting my career back together after taking a break of like 25 years.
St. Louis,
They call it Greater St. Louis, spreading from MacArthur Bridge out past the Missouri and the Merrimack. But it's a big city with streets you've never walked. If you knew how many youngsters in your city roam the streets in restless, destructive gangs, of course you'd help organize better activities for them. But you have your office or your shop. You can't be out all day looking for boys who have nothing to do or finding places for neighborhood centers.
My very first band was called Mike and the Majestics. We started playing about 1963. It was Michael McDonald, Bob Bortz, Pat Malloy, and myself. Here's some early pictures. That's me with my Epiphone Crestwood guitar, which, you know, in those days you didn't pay attention to what was going on. And one day I decided to strip it and take all the paint off, take it all apart, and carve out knots out of it and stuff. I looked on eBay last week. These guitars are going for like $12,000 now. At that point, it was like by 1963, it was before the drug culture had hit and the 60s had begun and stuff. And we put together a band, and it was like every day we would run home from school and we'd go down in the basement and start practicing. It was just a real love that we had. You know, I don't want to dwell on the drugs that happened through the 60s and the 70s, 80s and 90s, but I think that time in my life was a time where it was just the joy of music and learning. We did a lot of Kingsmen songs, and it was before the Beatles hit. It was like a rhythm and blues band. And then we started taking the band out, and we had a neighbor who was a frat guy down at Washington U, and we started playing frat parties. And if you've ever seen the movie Animal House, it was just like that. It was like, you know, total craziness, these wild parties. And there's one occasion, Mike McDonald's dad had dropped us off, and we played this frat party, and he comes to pick us up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there's these girls in their bras dancing on tables and stuff. And we got grounded. We couldn't play for 6 months. There was two kinds of bands back there, the soul bands and then the British invasion style bands. Mike got this offer to play with a group called the Sheratons, Jerry J and the Sheratons, which is a soul band. The three other guys in the band, me and Bob Bortz and Pat Malloy, we went to Mike's house and we talked to his mom, and his mom said, Mike's going to be like Elvis one of these days. He's going to really make it big. And when he makes it big, he'll come back and play with you guys. We were all teary eyes and crying and stuff. But anyway, we reformed a group called The Good Feeling. The name of the band, The Good Feeling, came from, we were looking through magazines and we came across a Pepsi-Cola ad that said, "This is the good feeling." So we thought, man, that's a cool idea for a band. And so we had asked a friend of ours to make a drum head for us, do the artwork on it, and he didn't know how to spell, so he misspelled the name, and we just kept it that way. We were a huge success in St. Louis. We had a fan club. We played all the dances, the teen dances, and then the Castaways came in, which was a teen club. We played there with Kenny Rogers in the first edition, the Cowsills, Paul Revere and the Raiders, a whole bunch of different bands. The Castaways was a great place. We also played 4 or 5 times at the Kiel Auditorium for different things. We played there with the Jefferson Airplane and Big Brother and the Holding Company, the Iron Butterfly. We did all kinds of English invasion stuff, Yardbird songs, Pretty Things. We were big on the Shadows of Night from Chicago. The band Love was a huge influence on us. We played all their songs, 7 and 7 Is. It was definitely a psychedelic band. And we would start off with Time Has Come Today, and we'd have an echoplex, and it'd be time, 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 you know, it was. So I had quite a childhood playing in the Good Feeling. It was, you know, kind of like, I wish I could go back and relive all those days. We really didn't care about money, we didn't care about drugs, we didn't care about all the pitfalls. We just cared about playing music and having fun. And that's really what music should be about, I think, is the fun factor. And that was a Good Feeling. That was what the Good Feeling. That's a group that should have made it. It should have made it. You know, just, and we came close, but we never did really make it. The most exciting times of my childhood were spent at the Club Imperial. Anybody that's anybody in the music business in the 50s and the 60s played at Club Imperial in St. Louis. It was George Edick's famous Club Imperial. So to me, the history of music in St. Louis is all about the Club Imperial. I consider it ground zero for rock and roll. You know, Chuck Berry would play there, the Bar-Kays, the Marquis, Booker T and the MGs, Alvin Cash and the Crawlers. Bob Cuban played there all the time. Pretty much is the who's who of music from the St. Louis area. Well, the biggest one, of course, is Ike Turner. I mean, Ike Turner wrote the very first rock and roll song, Rocket 88, and he might have actually wrote it there at the Club Imperial. Who knows, but a couple of his early records with Tina were released live from the Club Imperial. About my 3rd guitar lesson, I brought in a 45 of Prancin' by Ike, and I said, man, I gotta learn this song. My guitar teacher, his name was Bill Dennis, says, you know what, this guy's a friend of mine, and he's practicing right down the street. I just seen him on my lunch break, so he took me down to Club Imperial, and I got to meet Ike, and stayed there to see the show, and it was like the most amazing thing in my life. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. That day when I came here with Bill Dennis and met Ike Turner was the biggest day of my life, biggest influence in my life. I mean, and Ike was dressed sharp. I mean, he was dressed sharp.
Yeah,
and I
dressed like the Beatles.
And I go, man, where'd you get your clothes? And he says, man, he kind of like tapped me on the shoulder and said, you need to get yourself together and go down to Joe's Clothes. And, which we did. And then we went down there and we found like these paisley silk shirts and Cuban boots and all kinds of things. The Club Imperial is on the 2nd floor of this building. In the basement, there was a nightclub in the 60s. It was called Bruno J. Grunyon's Bat Cave. The Bat Cave had all these fabulous bands play there, like the Blues Magoos, the McCoys. Of course, my old band, The Good Feeling, played there all the time, the Aardvarks, the Acid Set. So you had your older style soul bands playing upstairs while you had the younger generation playing downstairs. So it was really like a hub of music in St. Louis. It's where it was all happening.
Okay, we're going down, baby.
Now this is the teen club. This was the Bat Cave. Holy mackerel. It looks so small now. This is where the stage was over here. Well, here we are at the Bat Cave, 40 years later. I had some of my greatest times when I was a kid here. Actually, seeing the Blues Magoos here was like an amazing event because they were like one of my favorite bands. They had a hit song called We Ain't Got Nothing Yet. And when they came to St. Louis for the first time, they played over in that little bitty corner right there. It looks real small to me right now, but when I was a kid, this was huge. You know, it was huge. You really want to sell your records? Let's take a look at them. I'm like crazy about records. Oh, this is killing me, Greg. Oh, this is making me sick, Greg. This is making me sick. I hate to say it, but these records are in bad shape, man. Oh man, these records are killing me. Otis Redding, Sly and the Family Stone, Little Anthony and the Imperials, Slade. Here you go, right here. Blues Magoos, the electric comic book. It's in terrible shape, but I'd still want to have it just because I'm a Blues Magoos fan.
Think about where it came from, too.
Look at this, Louie. I bet the Kingsmen played here. I guarantee you the Hourglass played here. The Hourglass is the Allman Brothers. And this is their first record. Greg Allman, Dwayne Allman. I played a million gigs with them around St. Louis. They used to play Gaslight Square. Not a million, maybe 10 times. It was our intention to go junkin' today. So, I mean, if you're really serious about selling your records, is there more records back there? Okay, I gotta go back there. Oh, look at this. Look at this. I've been looking for this album for 100 years. For 100 years, and it's not in there.
It's just teasing.
Talk by the Music Machine. They were the coolest garage band that ever was. Oh my God. Okay, I'm gone. I thought when I got this, when I bought this at the Winsville Flea Market, and I thought, wow, I got an original VJ. But it turns out that this is a bootleg. That the real VJ record, the Introducing the Beatles, is underneath the hole. When it's above it, it's a later release. But and that makes a difference between it being worth like $400, and this is probably worth about $20. But I thought I hit it big, but then I was disappointed, you know. I didn't really have a record collection, and I had stopped playing for probably 14 years, and basically I sold all my guitars for English china. I got a real big collection of English china over there. I went to try to find myself some nice vintage guitars, and all of a sudden I realized that the price of them had gone through the roof. Like, you couldn't buy a Les Paul, you couldn't buy a Flying V, you couldn't buy a 335 unless you wanted to put out $10,000–$15,000. So I started to go around the garage sales to see if I could find old instruments that way. And I started looking over here, and I'd see china, or I'd see silver, or I'd see some other things, and it developed into passion for collecting antiques. That's how it got started. But, you know, that was probably 18 years ago. The market for antiques has bottomed out, so it's hard to make a living doing it. So I'm going back to the music, which has always been my truest passion and stuff. we got some buttons and stuff for you.
Good. I'll go right here?
Well, let me go find them for you.
Okay.
I thought you might be into these. So this medallion you're not interested in?
No, it's not for that.
Oh, no, it's not.
We have posters, we have stickers.
So are you Scorfina?
Yeah.
That's
Or-
him. That's the band.
Oh, that's the band.
Steve Scorfina.
Oh.
From Pavlos Dog REO Speedwagon. We got a signed poster here.
Well,
you
it's
want to go
only
ahead and
signed
go
by
with
Michael
the CD
Caine.
too? I'll throw the poster in.
You know how much, I mean, is it a charge on this?
You gotta
They're-
promote
They
yourself,
were
you know,
they
in
were
this
$10
business.
to do 5 on it since you're a dealer friend of ours.
Right now there's
Yeah, sure.
there's
I'll
thousands
have 'em
of
sign it
internet
for you.
radio stations, there's satellite
Thank you,
radio
Lynn.
stations, and
Well, you know what else I
almost
got you?
for an
I got
individual
packages
to
from
break through, they have to make that connection with each and every one of those on a personal level and get somebody behind them. And then after that happens, then all of a sudden you have enough airplay that these major labels might take a look at you and say, okay, well, this is good enough. Maybe we can play this. Maybe it's good enough. But I took it to like Casey and K-Hits, and they're like, oh, nope, sorry, we can't have nothing to do with this. It's not on the playlist. It's not Led Zeppelin. It's not Marshall Tucker. It's not, you know what I mean? So how do you break that corporate thing? That's my question to you.
So you're making an effort to get the record out there into the independent stores?
Yeah, exactly.
How are they?
Well, actually, it's been great. Well, let me put it this way. It's been great. My CDs in Vintage Vinyl, Euclid Records, CD Warehouse, CD Reunion.
Hey man, well, what kind of deal you got on these things, man?
Well, we're selling them on the internet. We've been selling them like crazy for $18.99.
Oh,
But when we did our show at Blueberry Hill,
oh yeah, you had
we-
that CD signing
we
thing.
sold them for $10 a piece.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, that's what we're selling them for.
Oh, that's cool, man.
I'll give you $20 in a CD for that amp if you're interested.
Let me think about it. Yeah, I'll do
But-
it, man. Yeah, to get to a little CD thing, I'll do it.
Really?
Yeah, the 20 bucks on the CD.
Well, that's I'll even give you a sticker.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Look at that. This is my baby right here. That was the original idea for the Pavlos dog record. I had like all these old steel engravings, and I was going to have Pavlos dog. I thought, wow, she's so romantic. You know, she's got a rosary, and you
Yeah,
look
she be
there, there's
styling, man. She looked like she's decked out.
peacock feathers, and I thought it was perfect for the music that we did, but they wanted that grubby old dog that turned out to be the Pavlos dog.
He's an ugly mugger.
Well, let me get $20 out.
That's cool, man. My name's Roach, man. Don't whatever you got on that film.
And he's a guitar player.
Yeah. Yeah, I play lead guitar too. It's fun. Keeps me out of trouble. Don't play like Jimi Hendrix, but who the hell does?
There you go.
Hey, that's you, man.
From one old dog to another.
That's us.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yep, man. Hip potato chip.
We'll see you.
Catch on a rebound, bro.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Look at that, man.
Have fun, man. Enjoy it, man. Get something to mess around with.
I do have the speakers for it.
Send it down to Tuppy Shop and fix it up for you.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. When I was about 17, my mom and dad moved into this house. They bought it for $18,000. It was an old Victorian house, built in the 1860s. It was really great living in this big old Victorian house. It had about 5 fireplaces, big grand stairways, carriage house in the backyard, which we turned into a practice hall for my bands. And I practiced there with REO Speedwagon, The Good Feeling. Pavlos dog did probably about 90% of their work for the first record there at the carriage house. Gray stones shining in the sunlight. first time. Arlington, green feels so depressing. Washington, have you learned your lesson? I was in the good feeling till about 1968. I got a phone call from a guy named Irv Azoff, and it was a bad connection, and I could, you know how phones used to be back then, and I thought he said Illinois Speed Press. He wanted me to come and audition for the Illinois Speed Press, and I said, well, sure, man. That's that group that does that song Bad Weather, man. They're a great group, you know. So I went up to Champaign, Illinois, and I got there, and I found out I was auditioning for REO Speedwagon. I was, oh, who are these guys? But I auditioned and got the gig and went with it. And I was with them for about a year, maybe a little bit longer than a year. And they were a hard-working band. You know, they worked like 6 nights a week and practiced. I turned 21 when I was in REO Speedwagon in 1969. And the drug culture was completely hitting. Everybody in the world did drugs. When I moved away from home for the first time, I moved to Champaign, Illinois. It was a college town. And here I was just bombarded. The first thing they did was say, like, well, our roadie goes out to San Francisco and he picks up this batch of stuff from Osley. Try this, try this. And I honestly could say that if I would have stayed with that band, I'd probably be dead right now. So it's like it was a good decision that I decided to leave when I decided to leave from the group. I quit the group about 4 months before they put out their first record. After REO Speedwagon, I had a girlfriend. Her name was Vivian Ingleson, and she was an artist, lived up in Rockford, Illinois. And her father owned this big farm, so I decided, okay, I'm going to be a farmer. I'm going to give up this rock and roll stuff, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I'm going to go drive a tractor. That's pretty intelligent for me to do, right? And so anyway, I got out on the tractor, and I'm driving it around for about 3 weeks in the rain, and it's like miserable, and you're bored to death. And somebody got my number, and he called me up and said, we need a guitar player. I didn't know what band I was going to audition with when I talked to them on the phone. I just knew that they were playing at the Chase Park Plaza, and I would get a steady paycheck. And it was, you know, at the point when I joined the group, I would have joined anything to get away from being a farmer. In the very beginning, what made Pavlov's Dog the great group that it was the fact that we all contributed something special. I was a blues rock and roll guitar player playing with a classically trained keyboard player, Dave Hamilton, and Siegfried, or Richard Nadler, the violinist, I mean, he was classically trained. He was actually a jazz musician. Mike was a rock and roll drummer. He came from Chuck Berry. Rick Stockton was on bass. Then you added Doug. Doug played flute and mellotron. It was just a totally unique sound. And actually, it stands up today. I still think the songs that we did sound timeless. If you hear them, they sound just as good now as they sounded back then. That's if you like the sound of David's voice. Some people loved it and some people hated it. You know, but the band itself was just an amazing. I mean, when we were playing, we knew it was something special.
What I remember is we were young, and before we were signed, you know, it was just the greatest band I've ever had, I've ever put together. Siegfried, his real name, Richard Nadler, called the band thought of the name Pavlov's Dog in the Conditioned Reflex Soul Review and Concert Choir. So we tried that for a while, but people lost their breath trying to pronounce it, so we cut it down to Pavlov's Dog. One of my closest friends was Ron Stevens. He knew that I wanted, to form an original band so bad. He said, well, whenever you've got that on tape, your original band, bring me a copy and I'll play it on prime time on Casey. Here it is. The Acetate, theme from Subway Sue. This is what I brought Ron Stevens. Nobody in the band wanted me to take the product, to Casey, to Ron Stevens, because at the time, each individual had a little screw up they did on each song. Guitar screw up, violin screw up, whatever. And they, I listened, I thought, well, screw up or no screw up, it's gotta feel. See, that's what you're gonna hear in quality.
What was it like the first time you heard the band on the radio?
Oh my God, better than sex. I remember the feelings. I do remember the feelings. And it would be nice to go back 30 years. That would be a great thing, and to be able to feel that feeling again.
Pavlov's Dog is like kind of one of them forgotten bands because we were a little odd compared to the normal top 40 stuff and the normal hard rock stuff. So we don't get the airplay like Led Zeppelin or Sammy Hagar or any of those groups, or REO Speedwagon.
Pavlov's Dog, you either love him or hate him, and it's because of David Surkamp and his voice, which the record label loved. They wanted David Surkamp. They didn't want Pavlov's Dog.
You can't explain feel. Either you got it or you don't within each other. Another guitar player can play the same notes, can learn the same notes as Steve Scorfina, musical parts, but that doesn't mean he's going to sound the same. You can't teach feel. You are who you are. And we happened, as a group, at the time, we happened to really luck out because it was perfect in music feel. You can't explain, either you got it or you don't. This was the order in popularity. The first is the least popular. See, so it gets popular, more popular, more popular, more popular, more popular, and we are right before a night at the opera.
There's a certain joy about playing music that you can find no place else. The blues ain't nothing but a good man crying. I said the blues ain't nothing. Once it's inside you, it's not something that you're ever going to lose. Like when I was working other jobs, like when I was working as a decorator for Rothman's Furniture, when I woke up in the morning, I didn't think of myself as a decorator. I thought of myself as a guitar player. But I still went to work and did something that I didn't really want to be doing. And that went on until finally I said, this can't go on any longer. Well, I think everybody is like that way. Sometime early in their life, it's formulated in their head who they are and what they are. And then for the rest of their life, that's what they're striving to be. And unfortunately, there's a lot of unhappy people in the world because they aren't what they're striving to be. And, I got to say, times are pretty tough right now. The economy is really bad, and it's hard to survive. And if you are, sure, you can go out and get a job. I can go to the unemployment office and apply for some job, some factory, and work and support John and Angela. But how gratifying is that going to be for me? You know what I mean? It's just like, I'd much rather be myself and be a musician, Sometimes it takes me a little bit to get warmed up. In the beginning, everybody was real open to work with each other, and it was a magical, unbelievable experience.
But as soon as we got signed, it happened so fast, and we were so young, I think there was a lot of ego happening. And especially on my part, I was egoed out of my mind. I had to wear my sunglasses, and I had to be recognized, and I was the worst. I probably was the worst.
In 1975, the Russian government contacted our management and asked if we would play in Moscow and be the very first rock and roll band ever to play behind the Iron Curtain. And we were going to do it, but it didn't benefit our manager, who was a con man and a crook and was taking our money and using it for all kinds of other things. So when we didn't do it, Elton John was asked to do it. At that point, his career was kind of floundering, and I saw in the behind the scenes on VH1 or whatever it was, where he credited that act of going behind the Iron Curtain for the first time as being the thing that got his career back on track and put him over the top to be a really big success.
We were wide open, let it wide open for a manager to really take advantage of the situation and totally screw us for over $2 million. Ron Powell, really, he was like a real life Lex Luthor. He was unbelievable.
We were told by CBS, they said, well, this is off the books, but if you guys don't get a new manager, you're going to be dropped by the label and stuff. So we recorded the third record, and it was called Has Anyone Here Ever Seen Siegfried? That was the working title for it. And we didn't get a new manager, and we got dropped by the record label.
And I think if it wouldn't have been that manager who did it, it would have been somebody else. Because we didn't care about money at the time. We just cared about recognition.
At that point, record companies still wanted you to have a big hit single and stuff, and we never. The closest thing we had to one was Julia, and it really wasn't an over-the-top, number one, top 10 hit or anything like that. Honestly, I had played music for 20 years before that and played with some pretty great people. Really, when Pavlov's Dog came out, it was unique and way over the top. Right off the bat, it was just an original sound. And I don't know if I'll ever be in anything that creative again. I know that I'll work with other creative people, but that was a real special thing. You know, I'm really proud of my CD. You kind of got like a small picture of what went on in my life, and to be able to have something to show, because there's a lot of people that go through life and they don't have nothing to show. And this I'm really proud of. And I feel like it's a great legacy to leave for my kids. Like, if nothing happens for it now, maybe 20 years from now, somebody will pick up one of these songs and put it on a movie or something. And my son John and my daughter Angela would get something for it, you know? So that's a big thing for me. This is the hard part. This is when you've been here all day, all night, you've been sewing all day, now you gotta tear down and the wind's blowing like crazy, everything's getting blown over. And but it's better than it raining and thunderstorming while this is going on. One day you're a rock star, one day you're working at a flea market.
Did you have a good day?
We had an okay day. I mean, it was, the economy's down, it was not as good as what I had expected.
So how'd you do with CD sales?
CD sales were good today. We're real happy with them. Know a lot of people around here that
They were better than the antique sales, actually.
Yeah.
I've sold about 15 CDs today. You know, all the record guys come and they go, well, we gotta get a CD from them. That's it. That's all she wrote. So it's like a new trick to come out and try to recreate myself. Artists that can recreate themselves, you know, it's hard to recreate yourself. You know, have you guys tried to recreate yourself lately? And, you know, the blues has always been the roots of everything I did. When I was in REO Speedwagon, I was playing blues licks. When I was in Pavlov's Dog, I was playing blues licks. But that's what any guitar player does. When I hear Eric Clapton, I hear him playing Albert King or Ike Turner. He's the underestimated guy. It happens that he was one of the creators of rock and roll. You got to give him his credit, if you like him or not. Same thing with Chuck Berry. There's a lot of negative stuff going around about Chuck. But boy, was he ever an influence to people like me.
To showtime. Do you ever have any traditions right before going on stage? Or
well, actually, Kathleen bought me this. Look at this. It's called Goldschlager. Have you ever? And I usually take a little shot of this stuff to loosen up the vocal cords. So here's to the future and dog tracks.
Good music.
Here you go, honeybee. We're gonna do a little song. This is kind of almost a religious blues song. It's called Hellhound Blues.
What do you mean religious? What kind of religion?
Well, you know what I mean. Kind of. It's about temptation, about all the juju. Anyway, this is my friend, Miss Ingo.
Ingrid Berry, give her
Mrs. Ingrid Berry. You want to play a little harmonica for them, honey? Honeybee. he's no friend of mine. He's just a hellhound on my trail. The devil, he's no friend of mine. He's just a hellhound on my trail. You got the sweetest lips I've ever seen. They make me wanna kiss and tell. You got the sweetest lips I've ever seen. They make me wanna kiss and tell. The devil, he's no friend of mine. He's just some hound dog on my trail. Well, I cannot fight my destiny. If I do, I'll surely fail. You know, one road leads to heaven, and one road leads to hell. The devil, he's no friend of mine. He's just a hound dog on my trail. The devil, he's no friend of mine. The devil, he's no friend of mine. The devil, he's no friend of mine. You better get yourself right. The devil, he's no friend of mine. Thank you.
Good night.